Hi, I'm Laura,
Hi, I'm Deanne.
And I'm Philippe.
and we are reading Queen's Play by Dorothy Dunnett, and we're on part two, chapter six, Ballagh, the Forfeited Feast. And Philippe is going to lead us through a discussion, but before we start, what are you guys' initial impressions of this chapter and its revelations?
I thought it was a great twist that the whole like drunken Lymond was actually him trying to move poison through his body. Like that was such a great twist because as we moved through the chapter, I was getting more and more frustrated with Lymond. And like I was going along with Liam in his journey, in his emotional journey through the chapter. And then of course you find out at the end that something else is going on, which was delightful, very done it. Like as soon as I figured out he'd been poisoned, I was like, of course that's what's going on. That was obvious. And also, I am still actually not convinced about Robin.
Really?
Even though Lyman flat out tells us he's the murderer, there's just a couple of things that make me think that maybe he did poison, like maybe he did put the nightshade in the mulled wine, but I still don't think he's the big bad guy. So.
How about you, Philippe?
Yeah, I have to echo Dee's sentiments about the party scene. I was really frustrated with Lymond and, what is happening? Why is he getting to this level? What's going on? So it was a complete surprise when Margaret came in at the end and was like, oh, you're working the poison through. And at first I was like, he wasn't poisoned, he's just drunk. I was like, oh no, he was poisoned. I think there are definitely still questions about Robin Stewart, but I think there's more evidence to show that he is working for Daubeny and he has possibly been the one trying to kill Liam and Mary, Queen of Scots, this whole time. So we can talk about that when we get there. Yeah, and I just really, I really love Liam. I really do. I will be very sad if something happens to him.
Why do you love him?
He sort of came along for the ride, and he's like this unrefined gentleman. Well, unrefined in relation to the high court of France, of course. But I don't know, he's trying his best, and he's actually a lot smarter than most people give him credit for. And like, I kind of see echoes, but not mirror between Liam and Una, what's happening there, and what Robin Stewart thinks is happening between him and Lymond. So.
Oh, I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah.
I just really like he seems to have his priorities in order, like, except for the whole not caring about his country bit. Like, that's a glaring thing. But like,
he actually does start to care about his country a little bit in this chapter.
He does. But like, he cares about the scholars at the dinner, and that's what's impressive to him. And even his response with Una, we can talk more about that when it gets there, but it was like it's like when you want something and that thing happens, but it's not quite right, but you're like, I want it anyway, so I'm gonna take it, and he didn't do that. Like, he wanted her, and she was clearly willing, but not in the way that would actually make him happy. Like, he could tell, he knew that there was something off, and so he said no. And I just really like that a lot.
Philippe, is that the parallel, or is there other parallels that you see between Robin and Thady, and then Una and Liam?
I think that, just on a simple level where Liam is falling for Una, he's really into her, and sort of gets to this level where he's told, if you change your ideals, there may be something for us in the future. At least that's how I read it. And then Robin, I feel there's a definite subtext of him falling in love with Thady Boy, not knowing, of course, that it's Lymond in disguise. Although there are hints given to him in this chapter that there is more to Thady Boy than is obvious. I don't know. I've been in the situation that Robin Stewart has been in, where I've been falling for the wrong person for the wrong reasons and really hoodwinked by that person. So like, I kind of, even though he's probably the murderer and like one of the bad people in this book, I kind of feel bad for Robin. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel very bad for Robin.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
So
We see as we go through the chapter.
yes, so I will add also my initial impression, just to add on what you guys said, was the shock at how bad it is with Lymond in the French court, where he's so, debauched and decadent and messed up. And like, yes, it's kind of forgivable because then you're like, oh, poor thing, he was poisoned. But at the same time, like, no one was surprised by it. This seems to happen all the time. So this is probably like the worst, but it's not out of the ordinary at all. So I don't know how much we should be forgiving him and being like, oh, it was just the poison. He really is a mess. That's not the poison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a difference of degree, not a difference of kind, and Liam even says that explicitly, like, that people aren't surprised and that this must be happening all the time. Like, he's kind of has a moment where it's like, oh, this is what happens with the court. And he's like, ugh, I don't want any of this. And yeah. So.
And even though he is trying to fight off the poison, he's still pretty damn drunk by the end of it. And he says some pretty unforgivable things to Liam Rowe in that moment. So.
Oh my God, yeah. I do love how he's just, I kind of told you guys, like, when we were reading the scene in the Dell in Game of Kings, I was like, whenever he's doing something in a future book that's beyond the pale and unforgivable, I come back to the scene and like remind myself why I like him, because he really isn't like a perfect person by any means. He does terrible things.
Yeah.
All right, you want to dive in?
Sure.
Yep.
Let's get started. So there's a lot of little mini segments in this chapter. We don't have to touch on each and every one. I'll just try and say like the important thing that happens with each one, and then we can go from there. So as the chapter opens, Liam Rowe is...
No, you got to read the quote for this chapter.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Oh my gosh. This quote. Okay, so there are 3 banquets: godly banquets, human banquets, and demon feasts, i.e. banquets given to the sons of death and men, i.e. the lewd persons and satirists and jesters and buffoons and mountebanks and outlaws and heathens and harlots and bad people in general, which is not given for earthly obligation and is not given for heavenly reward. Such a feast is forfeited to the demon. And I love the way that this paragraph basically says, if you're getting together to have fun, it's a demon feast. Because if it's not for obligation and it's not for God, everything else is demonic.
Well, and also that if you're cool, like if you're an artist or a satirist, if you're lewd, whatever, if you're anybody that you'd want to hang out with, those are the people, the bad people at the demon
bad
feast.
people in general, yeah. I'm like, ouch.
I don't know about you two, but I've been to quite a few demon feasts myself over the years.
Oh yes, with you two, in fact.
I was like, we together, we 3 have been too many. Oh my goodness.
Okay, keep going, Philippe. But...
No worries. No. So we find out that Liam Rowe has stayed at Newby with Una and Lady Boyle, and he's sort of healing his arm because he was injured when he got jumped upon by the Cornishman at the end of last chapter. He's been spending some time there, so he's not really around to sort of keep his eyes on Thady Boy and what's happening in the court, which is why it's such a surprise when he comes back. I think he's there about a week. We also learned that one of the Irish party that's with Lady Boyle named George Paris is heading back to Ireland because Cormac O'Connor never made it. I don't know who he is, but his name has come up before. So Robin Stewart is sent to sort of escort him back to Ireland. So it's his second time going. He's not very happy about that.
Do we know, have we heard of George Paris before? Is that a new name to us? I don't remember him.
His name might have popped up before, but I think this is the first time it pops up. But I think his description is important. A rangy Irishman gifted with considerable powers of intrigue. So I think there's a hint that he's a sort of spy also, and he's got these interviews with the king, the Duke de Guise. So he's doing some kind of diplomatic, aka like spying, passing information, something like that.
Yeah, because he's meeting with the constable and the king and the Duke de Guise, and he's doing diplomatic stuff. And so I was like, who is George Paris? Yeah. Okay.
Throughout all of this, we also find out that George Douglas is being a little schemer, and he writes a letter to Catherine de Medicis suggesting that she invite a certain Richard of Coulter to court.
Yay, Richard's going!
Yay, I hope so. For reasons, I think George Douglas posits it that wouldn't it be great now that you're offering, the Queen Dowager this spot of governorship in Scotland, why don't we actually speak to somebody from Scotland and see what they think about this? Of course, he's actually doing it because he knows that it's Lymond's brother, and Lymond is there as a spy. So George Douglas being sneaky again.
I think this whole section here is also interesting because we get hints of how debauched Lymond is becoming. So there's things like on To Us Sex, like 3/4 of the way down, you have this description of an evening with him, with Thady Boy, and like the king orders people to like roll him to bed, whenever time he goes to bed, and completely charming, completely drunk, completely irresponsible. He accepted it all. And then you get these hints that people are noticing this. So like Margaret Erskine is noticing how terrible it is. There's a little side comment that says Jenny's a little subdued, observed in silence. It could be because she's like getting super pregnant, but don't know what's going on there. And then the Queen has actually said that like the bloom has becoming a little tainted. So it seems like the things are coming apart a little bit. He doesn't have control over this anymore in ways that he had, or at least it seems like he doesn't.
Yeah. Notable also that it says it's generally Robin Stewart that's the one taking him home at midnight or dawn or whenever the wayward day ended. And I think also notable is that he's pretty messed up, but he's also kind of corrupting the whole court. And there's this part at the top of 206 where Margaret and Tom are talking, and she says, "I brought you herbs as you wanted for your fiend sick patient. Have you brought enough for the whole court of France?" So it's like, it's not just him. He's like bringing out the worst in all of them, and he's pushing these people who already aren't like great people to these kind of like heights of decadence.
Although, can we flip that equation the other direction and say it's not Lymond who's corrupting the entire court of France. It's the fact that he's there at the court of France that's causing him to devolve into this soppy mess. Like, it's their cynicism and lack of care for anyone, and like their desperate desire to be entertained 24 hours a day that's driving him further and further into this. So it's like, I'm not sure it's one or, I mean, it's a combination of both. Like he seems like trying to avoid pain with alcohol, and they're encouraging it quite a bit.
Yes, I agree that he's pushing them, they're pushing him, and then it just like exacerbates itself. But I think also he doesn't like them and he's intentionally messing with them and pushing them.
I do like how even the Queen notices, who we haven't really seen much of Catherine de Medicis yet. It's usually Diane de Poitiers who we are talking about. But halfway down 207, King Henry asks her, "Does this wildness distress you?" Glancing up from the letter, he followed her gaze. "Art roots in moldering soils. I suppose that is always the answer," which I really love that quote, by the way. "He is of a fresh and original talent, even when outside himself, certainly," said the Queen. "But I had thought lately that even the bloom was becoming a little tainted."
Well, I think there's also an interesting theme here, which comes up again with Liam later of, and it came up in the previous chapter too, like is his art worth him pushing himself, so far? Because it kind of like leaves him corrupted, and as we see in the later chapter, it hurts the art too, although I'm sure Deadly Nightshade hurts the art as well.
Yeah, there's a point before the poison sets in where he talks about in the evening, where he talks about his art is justified, or this justifies this, and then at the end of the same evening it's like nothing, like you've destroyed your art. There's no reason for it at all. So
yep. Also, just I love this phrase, the decayed brilliance of Thady Boy, and it had infected the court. Also, they gambled and sang and made love lightly and expertly. So if we're wondering if Lymond was having lots of sex with him, again, yes.
In his full costume.
Well, I think you were kind of going in the right direction, Philippe, that maybe he doesn't need the costume as much anymore because he's actually...
It's possible.
Yeah.
If he's put on a few.
And then I just love the way the section ends. There's just this great image of him like playing with fire. Literally, he's like juggling torches or something, and the king like gestures for one, and Thady Boy throws it to him, and then he uses it to burn the letter from George Douglas. And it's like this image has this kind of like Thady Boy as like a servant to the king because he does exactly what the king wants. The king just kind of casually snapping his fingers and getting what he wants from him, and also the whole idea Thady Boy is playing with fire.
Just one small plot point to bring up before we move to the next section is that Richard now has an heir. So Marietta has had a son, which is exciting.
Which also has implications for Lymond, though.
Yes, but does Lymond know? I mean, I'm sure he does. He always seems to know things. But if news has traveled to them, then I'm sure Lymond is aware at this point. Maybe that's another reason for the drinking? I don't know. I don't know if he has aspirations to actually be the heir anymore, but...
I think losing his title has important implications for him that we don't know exactly how it's affecting him, but we shouldn't assume that it's not.
Yeah. It's not just the loss of future expectations, it's the loss of current power.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he no longer has a title.
Yeah.
All right.
So in the next section, we see Robin Stewart learning that he is to be the sort of guide and escort for, what was his name again?
Cormac O'Connor.
And Cormac, yes. And it's the day that he finally stands up to John de Albany. And they have an interesting argument. I really have to find the quote, but the point where he brings up, here it is on 208. "Do you," said to Albany, "you botched their arrival at Dieppe, you botched one of them at Rouen, you let Liam Rowe's dog run wild for some petty purpose of your own," and so on and so forth. I mean, these are all the moments where we've seen assassination attempts. And here we have John de Albany flat out telling Robin, you botched something about these jobs. So this is what I'm using as proof that de Albany is sort of hiring Robin as a would-be assassin. It could be something else, but I'm reading it that way.
Well, it's ambiguous, right? Because it could be that he botched assassination attempts, or it could be that he botched their calm and smooth arrival by allowing an assassination attempt to take place.
Yeah.
Could be either.
Like the tone of the scene, it's just mean. like Diabni's just being mean to Robin. He's not, it doesn't seem that he's accusing him of failure so much as he's just like, you're beneath me and I'm gonna like, it just made me so mad because it just felt like dismissal of his of any dignity that Robin had at all. And Diabni was just bored and like, I was
there's a part where Daubeny senses the spirit of rivalry within Robin Stewart, and he thinks to himself, is this man actually thinking he's on the same level as I am? Well, that's not right at all. Like, how dare he think that he can come at me like this? Like, he's been my underling this whole time. To
But
think
also,
that he has the gall to stand up to me?
but like weirdly, their rivalry is over the it's Robin holds up a crude mirror to D'Aubigny's bright-eyed stalking of Tatty Boy Ballagh.
Yeah. And then you just get this, like, he resented the intrusion of brutish feet in the precious gardens of his connoisseurship. And
so creepy.
It's so creepy, and it's so I can't even think of the word that I want to use. Like, Diabni is this self-righteous, like, he values himself far beyond his actual value. like
Yeah.
He thinks he's so precious, and it goes up, like, it's that whole thing where he collected all the art but he didn't really know anything about it. Like,
yeah.
He's so amazing, and he just treats Robin like I literally wrote on the side of it, like, what a dick.
Seems to be a shared bit about the Lennoxes, that they all sort of have this attitude.
Yeah, it's like he's just such a jerk. And you get these things where, okay, so Robin is mad. Like, he's had this expectation, probably encouraged by Diabni, that he would actually get a position or something that would enable him to have a fundamental change in his life. And he's been, he's a jerk sometimes too, but he's been working hard and trying to really please Diabni and get this position. And so when it falls apart and Diabni says, he gives him this like tiny amount of money and says that will perhaps enable you to buy some aquavita or pleasant evenings with your friends in Ireland. In other words, it was a paltry amount of money compared to what Robin had expected. And you get the sense that Diabni probably had it's like, well, there's a position that might open up if you do a good job, kind of thing, without actually ever promising anything. Yeah. And so then Robin's response, it says, years of training of poverty and repression had stolen the secret spontaneous anger from Stewart, leaving him without the courage even now to fling his career in the other man's face. But something newly nurtured within him balked at walking to the table and picking up that limp rawhide bag. Keep it, he said shortly, and buy a new inkwell with your, and he just, and that's as much as he can do. Like, that's as far as he can go in defying, is just keep your damn money.
And the newly nurtured, the thing that gives him the courage even to do that, is what Tatty Boy has nurtured in him.
Yeah,
inspiration.
Exactly. And it's this idea of like years of training of poverty and repression. And yeah, so like whatever Robin has done, and perhaps he has been in the employ of Diabni, and perhaps he has been the one who's sort of been the trigger man behind some of those events. It's not from him. Like, there's no way that unless this narrator is so unreliable that we can't trust anything at all, which would make a difficult book to understand. Like, you couldn't make any suppositions at all. This is not the kind of person who's sitting out to assassinate a bunch of people. Like, the years of training and the poverty and the, like, it's not that kind of assassination attempt, you know? I don't think so.
I already know the answer, so I can't reply.
Yeah.
But Philippe, do you have a reply?
I mean, I agree. I don't know what else much to say about that. So.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that he's the flunky for someone else. Like,
it's certainly not Robin Stewart working alone. If he is the assassin, he is not working alone. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So.
I'll also note in this section, a buckle of his cuirass had come undone and his hair needed cutting. So yeah. Robin also, like, he expects all these things, but he's not living up to the excellence that he thinks he is. So part of his problem is his own problem.
That is so funny that you read that way, because that is not how I read that line at all. Like,
no, how did you read it?
No, how I read it was, wait, where is it? Because I didn't
208. 208, like 2/3 of the way down.
Yeah. Okay, so Stewart comes in and he's like trying to plead his case. He's like, I believe that so far I've given, like, I understood I was to assist you for the whole Irishman's visit. I believe that so far I've given satisfaction. A buckle of his cuirass had come undone and his hair needed cutting. Noting these things irritably, do you, said D'Aubigny, you botched their arrival. I read that is there's these tiny, tiny things that are wrong with his appearance that mean nothing. And D'Aubigny looks at those little things and he's like, this guy's not good enough for me, and just wrecks him. And like, it's, yeah, like a buckle came undone on his outfit and he needs a haircut. Like, okay, he's a soldier. Like,
well, he's a soldier working at the French court where appearance is everything.
But I'm just like, no, like, that's not like, okay. It's like his shoe came untied and he should have got a haircut last week. Like, and you're going to totally destroy his future prospects because you're bored and you're annoyed that this guy doesn't look perfect.
I think D'Aubigny is being a jerk, but I also think that Robin isn't as great as he thinks he is either. They both have the same problem.
Oh, no. I don't think Robin is as great as he thinks he is. But I don't think that's, like, I think that line is more about D'Aubigny being a jerk than it is about, because I think there's plenty, like, there's been a lot of explicit explanation that Robin is not as good as he thinks he is. You know, where he's just like, yeah, that was pretty explicit. Yeah.
So the section ends with, I'm going to take Ballagh back with me.
Yeah, and his subdued anger, sort of the only threat that he can levy towards D'Aubigny is like, I'm bringing Thady boy with me to Ireland, which
even he knows is not going to happen.
It's a clear empty threat, even right from the beginning.
But Lymond is such a mess that he doesn't say no. He could have set a boundary very clearly, and instead he's like, out of eyes that did not focus very well, said that he was beginning to think the court of France was overrated himself and that he would consider it. So he's leading Robin on, and it's not nice.
It's not at all. And he's not, like, you get this sense throughout this chapter, if Lymond is a born teacher, which was brought up earlier, you know, he's like someone who knows how to mentor and knows how to help people be better than they are, which he seems to. He's totally failing with Robin. Like,
right. He put all his attention on that rooftop race and then he moved on.
Yeah. He's just
for obvious reasons, it was clear he had had no breakfast apart from some strong wine.
Yeah. He's failing in this.
Yeah.
All right. So, moving on?
Yes.
Okay. So, Thady boy goes hunting, 3/4 drunk. Probably more than that, but he slashes his hand, and of course Robin Stewart decides to help him out with this. So he goes to visit Abernathy because he knows he's got some quality drugs, but he's not there. Tosh is there. Tosh gives him some information about Lymond, well, about Thady Boy, that Robin Stewart hadn't actually noticed before. For instance, he never knew that he was in a galley, and he sort of feels jilted, like, why didn't he share this information with me? Aren't we good friends? Aren't we growing? Haven't I shared stuff about myself with him? Why haven't I heard this back from Thady Boy? So there's this sense of resentment that sort of grows out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He gets suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Tosh, kind of horrible when he says, you'll need to get him into a rowboat and see if he'll show you his paces. And I was like, oh, ouch.
But it is very, very telling about Lymond that all these clues about his identity come down to all these terrible scars that he has. It's not just, clues. It's also a reminder to the reader that this guy is super traumatized and damaged, like even just physically.
Yeah. But I kind of wonder too, like, this is another question I have about all the sex he's having. Like, how are people not noticing that his back is torn up with, like, is it so common for people to be brutally whipped that nobody's commenting on this, which says one thing about the society that's terrible? Or is his ability to make, have really good sex with people so great that he's distracting everyone from the fact that he's wearing a fat suit and his back is completely torn up with scars? Like, it's just,
if you use your imagination, you can kind of come up with ways.
Yeah, sure. Like, but it's like, he's got to be super distracting as a partner for.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, I imagine he must be keeping some of his clothes on. So.
Yeah.
So there's two things I wanted to say about this section. First of all, the way that Tosh is sort of giving Robin Stewart this information sort of unasked makes me think if this is possibly, how we ended the last chapter with Lymond saying, from this time on, God help me, I shall be my own bait. So we know that Tosh works with Abernathy and that Lymond trusts Abernathy. Perhaps this is Lymond's way of sort of spreading the bait around. Maybe he's working this in as a way to possibly reveal the true nature of Thady Boy.
Mm-hmm. I was a little surprised in this chapter that he wasn't more blatant about his real identity, actually. I was expecting him to kind of like step out. I mean, I'd be like, hey, I'm Francis Lymond. Like, I wasn't expecting that, but I was expecting more. So I didn't think that on first reading, but that seems reasonable. A reasonable reading of it.
Well, if he was already suspicious of Robin Stewart, then the only person he needed to let know was Robin Stewart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
True.
So.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, after Tosh sort of gives him all this information, he leaves, forgetting the salve that was mixed, and then goes back to the menagerie. Tosh isn't there anymore. And which he says, when he went back for it later, he found to his relief that the blunt little Aberdonian was out. And that's all we get. But obviously, Robin gets nightshade somewhere. And he knows that there's drugs in this menagerie. And one of the possible reasons he knows that is he possibly already took arsenic from it. That's just something I thought. So it could be more proof.
Yeah, I mean, he had to get it somewhere, and because Lymond does say that that's the one that poisoned me. So this is almost certainly where he got it.
And he was relieved that Tosh wasn't there anymore. So I was like, oh, good, I can just grab what I need and go. Seems a little irresponsible of Archie to just keep these drugs unlocked all the time. So unless
elephants are in need, man.
Unless there's a lot more to Archie that we don't know yet. Who knows?
Also,
there's a little moment at the end of this that just shows again how Lymond is like, I mean, if he's actively suspicious of Robin in a more direct way, maybe, I don't know. It says, so Robin sends him a note saying when he's leaving. And Lymond says, puzzlement as he read it showed briefly through the disordered rubbish heap of Thady Boy's face. Then he brushed it aside and swept into the bizarre and engrossing activity of the moment. And so it's like, for whatever reason, he's just like, oh, whatever, and goes on with what he's doing instead of, I don't know. He's still ignoring Stewart.
He's being super careless because he's here on a mission to protect the queen. He should be paying, and he's suspicious probably of Robin, so he should be paying close attention, and instead he's just like, eh.
Yeah, it goes on.
I mean, I think it's just another sign that Lymond is he really here for this mission, or was that just an excuse for him to come here and drown his pain / live it up?
Both.
Yeah, I think probably is some of both. And then also just mention, this just made me so sad. It's on 211. The archer, when he kind of has this moment of realizing that he hasn't been let into Thady Boy's kind of secrets, the archer, stirring from his insubstantial dream of mutual confidence, waited for the familiar plucking of pain at his guts. This poor guy. I just think of the kid who's been bullied all through high school. Like he got his hopes up and he got them crushed again, and he's so heartbroken. So if he's poisoning him out of heartbreak, like you can see exactly why.
And I've been there. Now, I've never poisoned anybody because of that. But, I've had that moment where I find out something about somebody that I've shared so much with, and I'm like, how could they not have told me that? Because they told this other person. It sucks. I have a little sad spot in my heart for Robin. So I hope things work out in his favor and he's not as awful as he seems, but I don't know.
Yeah. We shall see.
So we jump back to Newvie, where Liam Rowe is ready to head back to Blois, but he has one last ride with Una the day before, where she starts the conversation by bringing up the knowledge that she finds out that Thady Boy is apparently leaving to go back to Ireland with Robin Stewart, which of course is not really happening, but that's the news that's about. And they start a lovely discussion, which I figured you guys would pick apart.
That was your plan, huh? I do have some comments here.
Yeah. I mean, I like this part, but this isn't the part of the story that I'm as interested in right now. So,
well, I think you had the good summary of it at the beginning, though, which is that she's basically like offering himself in exchange for him doing what she wants politically. So, yeah. So let's deconstruct this a little bit. First, 212. There was a flask at his saddlebow. Kneeling, he offered it, and she drank deeply like a man. So it's just another clue to her character that she's not this innocent virgin looking for a French husband. There's some other stuff going on with her. She's experienced of the world. She's drinking out of the flask like a man.
There's actually more than one comment connecting her physically to being male. So like there's a point where her arm is described as like the arm of a boy, or the arm.
You're thinking of her wrist. She's got boy's wrists.
Yeah, boyish wrist or something. And it just made me wonder, like, obviously that's sort of a descriptive shorthand for her character being different, but it's also kind of like, why does she have to be described like that? Like, why can't she just be a woman who's, knows how to drink and has, like all that? But
it's not common at that time.
Yeah, it's not common. Yeah. So, although the boyish wrist thing I thought that was taking it a little bit too far. I'm like, why can't she just have, she's a girl, can't she have girlish wrists and also drink like a man? And, I mean,
the boyish wrist is a weird descriptor because she's such a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
I don't know. It has like a weird resonance that it doesn't make any logical sense, but it kind of just like fits her character.
Yeah.
Yes. But they also, so after they talk about Thady Boy at the start of 213, they actually have an interesting conversation about him and about like responsibility and power.
Yeah, I did underline a special quote in here that I think really speaks to the core of why Liam Rowe is sort of afraid to use the power that he has. Halfway down page 13, "You have a bully of a memory," Liam Rowe agreed peacefully. "I never knew a being on two legs yet that got a pennyworth of power and so much as treated his hound dog the same, or his woman." It's like power corrupts absolutely, and he's really afraid of using that power because he doesn't want to change the core of his being. This is one of the things that I really like about him.
And I think Una has a really good quote just a little bit further down where she says, "You feel for the man you can see, not the nation you cannot." And I think that that's a good, like, he has compassion for what's in front of him, like the concrete practical thing that he can do that's in front of him directly is what he cares about, and the abstract, like, far away notion is not as interesting to him, and it's not as compelling as what's directly in front of him. And
Yeah. Which is like, it has some positive sides, but also has some negative sides. Like lots of people are dying and you don't care, even though you could help them because you can't see them.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that they have this conversation after talking about Thady Boy. And, Liam Rowe makes this comment about he'd like to stay on here forever, indulging himself. And then Una says, or maybe he has a sense of responsibility. Oh, now, but I forget, you believe there's no such thing as all, the power corrupts. Why does she say maybe he has a sense of responsibility in relation to Thady Boy?
I mean, we don't know what she knows. So
I feel like it's a clue that she knows he's Lymond, because there's no reason to say that about Thady Boy if he's actually Thady Boy.
Right. So we have no clue how well informed she is about what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, she had that conversation with Thady Boy in the very beginning that was like, does she know?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is another hint that she probably knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, were you going to talk about this section also?
I was just going to move forward a little bit and bring up that he asks her the question again. But if there was something to speak before that, by all means.
I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting the way they describe France. You peel it away as you might an artichoke, the music, the sculpture, the pictures, and the palaces, and there, soggy at the bottom, are hereditary parliaments and absolutism, a dumb states general, the primitive taxes, the gifts, favoritism. England breathes a coarser air, but it seems healthier to me. And she's not so on board with England, but she agrees with him about France, which then leads to an interesting conversation about, like, why are you trying to marry a Frenchman? But I love this description of the court because we keep getting these recurring images of, like, it's beautiful on the surface and it's rotten underneath.
Yeah.
Slimy like an artichoke. And I don't like artichokes.
I'll have your artichokes. I love them.
I love artichokes.
You can have them all.
Yeah.
Okay, so Philippe, then you're going to talk about the question he asks.
Yeah, he just brings it back up. So we sort of get a continuation of that moment that Lymond interrupted with the serenade earlier. Then ask it again, she said. Do you like me or do you love me at all? And we sort of get her answer to it. So I think it's interesting.
She likes him, but she wants something from him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So does she like him, or is she trying to persuade him to change his ways?
I think she likes him, but she doesn't like him in the way that he wants her to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not, I don't think she's repelled by him. I think she thinks he's, kind and all that, and not horrible, but she's not enthralled with him. She's not, excited to be with him because of who he is. And, like, I thought this next piece was really kind of sad. Like, so at the top of 215 they kiss, And there's this really sweet, like it's this really sweet kiss where I love the way it says, like, the woman, it was clear, was the more experienced of the two, and she made no effort to hide it. So she's not trying to be, I love that about her. Of all the things that drive me crazy about this character, I love the fact that she's not faking like her power and her experience, and she's not trying to be simpering and, you know, hide away as like this sweet little girl. She's like, no, this is me. And I like that about her. But it says, Liam's own simple nature came to his rescue. At this ultimate moment, he felt no awkwardness, nor did he strive for sophistication beyond his means. Instead, his own basic qualities, his speculative mind, his adventurousness, his essential decency, all brought to that first kiss something perfectly well integrated of its kind, and to Una O'Dwyer, quite new. And so it was like there was this moment of potential where he really, like, he's bringing to her this genuine interest and delight in her, and is being honest and not trying to pretend that he's more than he is. And then she's like, she'll give him what he wants, but not for the reason he wants it. And he realizes that, and so he says no. And it's kind of sad.
I think it's the question of whether she likes him. Her impulse had been kind, but it had not been selfless.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, again, I think she does like him, but she's here to ask him to do something. She's asking him to go back to Ireland and wait for her. So she makes it very clear in this scene, are you afraid of bankruptcy? I'm not asking the impossible, my dear. So there's conditions. So maybe she really does like him. Maybe she is charmed by him, but it's conditional on him doing what she wants for her political reasons.
Yeah, she may like him, but he's not her first priority. And
so I actually think what's interesting, or part of what's interesting here, going back to our main story, is she's using her sort of romantic or sexual appeal to get something that she wants from him for political reasons, which is got this kind of semi-veneer of prostitution, actually. She's experienced, she's kissed other people before, you know, etc.
I'm not sure the veneer is all that. There's not that much of a veneer either.
So the question is this any different than what Lymond is doing?
Yeah, I think the answer is no, because I don't think there's a veneer there either. Like, it's totally explicit. In fact, there's a point later in the chapter where the king talks about Lymond as a toy that he is, you know, displaying and playing with. And so, yeah, I think it's totally the whole concept that, like, Lymond is trading his skill and his body and his value as an entertainer in exchange for the things that he's trying to get from the court is, it's not subtle. Like,
well, and it takes us back to that kind of sad question of, is he enjoying any of this? Is he enjoying any of the sex he's having with these people? Is it all just transactional?
Yeah.
I would assume it's more the latter, unfortunately.
Yeah. Like, I hope so. I mean, I hope he is, but probably not. Yeah.
I'm just glad.
Well, then you get the question, though, if that's true, then what's driving him? Like, if he's not enjoying the drunken antics, if he's not enjoying all the sex, if he's not enjoying the debauchery, why is he pushing it so hard? You know?
Maybe he's trying to block out his bad memories. Maybe he thinks he enjoys it. Maybe he's trying to make himself enjoy it. Or maybe it's a distraction.
What were you going to say, Philippe?
I was just on a basic level, I'm just glad that Una wasn't brought in as a romance for Lymond, because that's initially how I was reading her. I thought that was going to happen. And there's still half a book it could happen, but I really hope it doesn't.
Why?
I don't like them as a match.
Why? Why?
I just think they're similar.
Their priorities don't match. Like I feel like if they get together, she's going to be using him for some goal of hers, and he'll be using her for some goal of his. And that does not seem like that does not seem healthy. Like, at all. Not that Lymond is a font of health, but
What did you say, Philippe?
I said it would really hurt Oliamro, and I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
What a betrayal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. And what was I going to say about
I don't want more reasons to dislike Lymond at the moment. Because I know not everything is sort of, the entire drunkenness isn't all just him, but he's a big part of it. So
I think that's why a lot of people don't like this book, is because Lymond kind of pushes the boundaries of you being like, do I like you anymore? Are you just a jerk?
It really reads to me like those, I'm sure you knew them, like at least I did, those guys in college who are part of like a frat or like a group, and they're always getting like completely sloppy drunk on the weekends. And you sort of ask, like, do you enjoy getting drunk? It's like, no, but it's what you do. And so you just get like hammered on a regular basis in some sort of like competition of who can get the most hammered and act the stupidest, and it's just, and over and over and over and over and over. And that's just what this looks like to me.
Well, it's one of those things that I enjoyed when I was younger, but at a certain point you're like, this is really boring, and then you stop doing it.
Yeah.
Sounds like my fraternity days at college, actually. So
were you in a fraternity?
I was in a fraternity, yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I can't picture this at all.
It was fun, but we did drink all weekend long, and Thursdays and Tuesdays and other days. So, but I'm older, so
you and Lymond would be right at home together in Queen's Play.
I think he's a little bit more devious and mischievous than I am, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So, all right. So I think we're done with that scene.
Cool. I do like that very last sentence, and no one but he knew that under the thick frieze cloak he was shivering. Like, I know. I want to give him a big old bear hug. Well, he can give me the bear hug because he's probably a bit of a bear. So.
And Una just kind of emphasized to me again why I'm not real fond of her, because at the end of the scene, like, she had a chance. It says her impulse had been kind, but it had not been selfless, and she was exceedingly proud. Her first reply to him died on her lips. So like, she was gonna be nice at the end, and then she didn't want to be vulnerable. And so she's like, nope. And then she says something mean. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, I think her pride is definitely a problem. It gets in the way of her being a kind person.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, I love her though. I'm just throwing that out there. I feel terrible for her too.
Everything that happens, yeah. So she could easily be redeemed, I think.
Yeah, I just don't think, like, I don't feel terrible for her at all, because I don't know anything about her that makes me feel bad for her. So like, I feel like if later in the book we find out her motivations and we find out what's driving her, I might change my mind about her. But
even here,
she's mean.
I feel bad for her because she's missing out on someone really good who genuinely cares about her, and her pride is keeping her away from something that could make her happy.
Yeah, and I'm just like, lady, it's your own fault. Deal with your shit. And like, notice the guy in front of you. Like, that's really, I just don't see any, so far Dunnett has not given us any reason to have sympathy for her, because all of the problems seem to be coming from her own choices. Like, we don't see yet, at least, why she's the way she is. Like, what is driving her to be this way? Why is she so proud? Has she had a childhood that was humiliating, and so now she, like, we don't know. So she just she just seems mean for reasons that are not justified, or at least are not given to us. So I'm totally willing to change my mind, but at the moment,
We changed our mind about Richard in the last book.
yeah. I like Richard.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll learn more about her and why she is the way she is, but as of right now.
So Liam Rowe and Peter Dooley head back to the castle at Blois. Thady Boy is still out. He's off to his drunken escapades. We find out that Liam Rowe is finally invited to a public gathering by the court, so he can be in the same room as the king. And it's this sort of big gala that's set up for all the sort of academia of France at the moment, which is very exciting for him.
I was gonna say, I love that this is the dinner that he goes to. Like, recognition came at last, and it's to the dinner that all of the people that he would want to talk to anyway are at. So
I think there's an important point right at the start of that section where Liam Rowe thinks to himself, he could understand the exasperation or even the dislike which he supposed had prompted Thady Boy's ill-natured riposte of the serenade. So he thinks that Lymond doesn't like him, which is totally not true, but I can see why he would think it because Lymond's acting like that.
yeah.
So you can see why their disintegrating relationship, which we noted in the earlier chapters, they were starting to get more tense with each other, that this is getting worse and worse, and part of that is this, like, now Liam Rowe actually thinks that Lymond doesn't like him.
Yeah.
So Lyman shows back up drunk with a bunch of other drunk people. They keep Liam Rowe up all night. And then Liam Rowe gives him the message about Robin Stewart, and Lymond, of course, immediately jumps to the root of the problem and asks him, where is it? What did she offer you to leave her?
Yeah, he says a mean thing about Una, and he just turns around and leaves. I mean, reasonably so, and doesn't see. And this bit about without seeing the sudden stillness on Thady Boy's face, and it makes me think like Lymond had a, oh crap, I went too far moment. So.
Yeah, I think
Doesn't
so.
stop him from going even further later, though. I mean,
I
understand. Well, he's drunk at this point too, so.
He's always drunk.
I think it was more that he was poisoned than it was drunk later. Like,
I think his nasty tongue comes out as a defense mechanism.
yeah.
When he's threatened, he bites back very hard. I think also there was something else. Where he was working really hard and Liam Rowe didn't see it. And then he's got this stillness on his face, like he feels bad that he went so far, but Liam Rowe doesn't see it. So the things a reader sees that kind of mitigate some of Thady Boy's excesses, Liam Rowe's not seeing.
There's also, and I don't know how reasonable this is, but he definitely has a history of pushing people away in order to keep them safer. So I don't know if this is a good reading of this final scene and how mean he was, but his judgment is completely impaired by both alcohol and deadly nightshade, literally the name of the plant. And so he pushes Liam Rowe away so violently and like so cruelly. But I wonder a little bit if the seed of that is, I've been poisoned, you have to get away from me, as a part of the motivation behind it. Like, it doesn't have to, because we've seen that from him before.
I think that's possible for the later seed. It's obviously not what's happening here.
Right. No, I mean the one at the end when he's so mean. And so
actually it could be. I mean, or it could just be like, I am in pain and I want to be alone, so like get the fuck out. Oops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then we get to January the 16th. Oh, I should have mentioned that Christmas happened throughout all of this. We just went right by Christmas. So maybe that was the last chapter. I don't remember. But Christmas came and Christmas went. January 16th is the day of this infamous poisoning ball. So it begins.
The demon party.
The demon party. The demoness.
I like calling it the poisoning ball.
The demon banquet.
We find out.
love this bit about Lady Fleming at the beginning. Were you going to talk about that?
No, go ahead.
About her. Basically just that she's pregnant and she's completely oblivious to the political like undercurrents that are surrounding this. And she thinks one thing's going on and that's definitely not what's going on. And because it says Jenny thinks that she's gonna become like the new Dion, and that is definitely not what's gonna happen, and everybody around her knows it. And there's this line about how she doesn't require deference or something, but she just assumes that people are gonna defer to her when this baby's born. And it's like, no, they're
Not gonna happen. Yep.
So Tom Erskine is back from the treaty. We find out that the invitation was sent to Richard Crawford. It's about a month old. They've gotten no response yet. And Lymond knows about it.
And it was hard to say if he either listened particularly or understood.
Right. He's
Yes.
Does he know that Richard's coming?
But it's also like we don't know when he's just out of it and not registering things and when he's hiding things. Maybe he's got a huge reaction to Richard. Like, it's Lymond, so who knows?
Yeah.
And then Liam Rowe, on his way back to his room, comes across this silent moment between Thady and Robin Stewart, where Robin is sort of on his knees and like touching Lymond and ready to say something important, which we'll just never know because Liam Rowe found that was the appropriate moment to interrupt.
Got his revenge for Lymond interrupting him with Una.
And again, I have had this moment where I've been the person on my knees, not literally, but I was about to say something very important to somebody that was special to me, and somebody else walked in the room. I think that's probably happened to a lot of us. So, yeah. I've definitely had my Robin Stewart feelings in this chapter, even if he's a prisoner.
I feel terrible for him.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, the fact that right before that, Lymond is so blasé about what he actually thinks. And he says to Liam Rowe, you know, you've no need to believe every tale I tell Robin Stewart. It was the only way at the time to get rid of him. He's welcome to sail back to Ireland and stay there if he wants to. I'll go soon enough in better company than that. He had, of course, no intention of running away with him, but he just casually like acted like, oh yeah, maybe I will, which is just it's just horrible. You don't do that to people.
And Robin probably knows that, but he's still holding on to some sort of hope that it's gonna go his way. Because this is, I think, the farthest he's ever gotten in this capacity, you know?
I think it's interesting that Liam Rowe says in this discussion that Thady Boy's voice was in a tone he did not at first recognize, quiet and clear-phrased and sane. So this is like, there's this moment where Lymond is perhaps sober and that they are like, they spoke for some time, then Stewart replied, but a good deal of the edge had gone. So Stewart was like upset and aggressive, and then Lymond talks for a while, and then Stewart talks again, and he's lost that aggressive shade to his voice. So whatever Lymond has done here, he's calmed him down completely. And then Thady said something quite brief, and there was a little silence, and then Liam Rowe walks in on them. And when he walks in on them, Robin's on his knees, and it says he went scarlet and then white, which makes me think anger and then fear. So he was angry that they were interrupted, and then he was afraid that they were interrupted. Which
He might have also been embarrassed.
I can see
Yeah,
embarrassed.
or embarrassed,
I
and then but the fear, but what going someone white usually means they're afraid of something. So to me, it says like, what was it about getting caught or getting walked in on that made Robin afraid?
I mean, we don't know how far he was going to go with what he was going to say, but we can certainly extrapolate that he was falling to his knees and begging Taddy Boy to run away to Ireland with him. Like he was, run away with me, you know, and then he was probably going to say more, or since he's already said run away with me, he's probably going to, you know.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then, yeah, Liam ruined it.
Yeah.
Ruined it.
What were you going to say,
Probably
Philippe?
see Robin professing his love, thinking that that was a good idea, which clearly not. But
I mean, that's what I thought was going on.
yeah.
Yeah. And he got like caught and was embarrassed. And
I may have done that before too. Professed my love at the total wrong time to the complete wrong person. Oops.
This is why Robin is so sympathetic, though. It's a lot of the
Yeah,
vulnerabilities in ourselves.
And then I assume at some point during this, either they had already, I don't think they shared the drink yet. I think it's after this that Robin slips him the poison.
Yeah, it's right after this. It's on 220.
Oh, so there's an actual moment where you can see.
Yeah, it's right here. It's the thick liquor.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he tipped down the thick scented liquor, choked, swore, and was the first to stalk off when the peed. So it's right after this.
Which actually tells me that he knew right away that he'd been poisoned. He chokes on it, swears, and stalks off.
Right. I don't know, though, because he spins... I thought he figures it out because he spends this like quite sober, what looks like at least an hour or two of singing beautiful music and like all of this music of Ireland that makes a Liam Rowe just go, oh, my country, it's beautiful. And then they have these Brazilian prisoners come in and things start to go batshit. And that's where I thought he figured out he was poisoned, because that's when he starts to get rid of the poison. Like he starts to dance incredibly crazy and starts downing alcohol and starts like, it's like his behavior makes this huge change in that one moment. And so that's what I thought was going on there.
I read the dancing portion to almost be a side effect of the poisoning, like he's twitching uncontrollably. Now, I don't know how belladonna poisoning affects, but it says later that Abernathy knew right away when he saw him dancing what was wrong. So that's why I assumed it was a side effect of what had poisoned him.
Yeah, I just went with like Margaret's talk about he was trying to like get rid of it by doing whatever it was he was doing. I didn't quite understand how that worked.
I think he was drinking lots of like liquor and oil to make himself throw up because he was trying to get the poison out. And then I think he had to keep active to like keep moving, to keep the poison from just, you know, killing him dead, keep it moving through his system.
And we see several times throughout this that he passes out again and again. Unfortunately, other people rouse him, wake him up because he's got obligations, thankfully.
Yeah, well, that's why I think he knew right away. And he was like, well, the best thing I can do is go to the banquet because I'll have lots of opportunities to drink and throw up and move around a lot and people will keep waking me up. And I can pretend that I'm oblivious, and that way if I survive, the killer won't know that I know.
Yeah, maybe. It was just that whole paragraph, which seems like super calm and super sober. And then we have this, these were pleasant enough. Nothing, in fact, hinted at a change in the tenor of the evening until, and then everything goes batshit. So that's why.
I think also, just before we move on, I'll highlight there was a line on 218, the new toy wound up clicking and jumping was to be set among the pedants unaware. So what an awful image.
That's the line I was referring to about the king. He just has a toy that he's using.
Yeah. And then we have Liam Rowe noting that all of the beautiful costumes that had been given to Taddy Boy by the King of France had all been handled like rags. So like that's, I think, tells us a couple things. One, this is so unlike Lymond because he's such a neat freak. And two, he has no respect for the French court because the fancy stuff they're giving him, he doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do, after being a galley slave for the Kingdom of France for 2 years.
Yeah,
It's a good point. Yeah, I'm not saying that he's wrong. We're clearly seeing there's an ugly undercurrent to the nation of the court of France at this time. And then we just have one more of him with his lute in hand, hurrying off to Diane or Dongan or Saint Andre or Marguerite or any of a score of his acolytes, masters, or mistresses. So again, it's just like he's gotten his way in with everybody.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how we see that difference, because earlier, like, Diane was kind of standoffish and, you know, but obviously she's not now. She's just included in the group. So he's...
I think we can also tell the exact moment when Robin decides to poison him, which is when Liam comes in and he gives that whole, like, he's not going to leave with you. He's got all these important people to stay and hang out with. Mm-hmm. And then it has, you know, for a burning second, no one said anything. Then Robin Stewart, all the sting returned to his voice, said shrilly, "God's curse, I hope not. For 5 months, I've had Irishmen falling out of my clothes like lice. I can't wait to get done with them." Like, that's clearly his. He was about to reveal his heart. He got, you know, brutally interrupted, and he's like, "I'm done with them." And he's going to get his heartbroken revenge by poisoning the mulled wine.
Which nobody else drinks out of conspicuously.
Well, it's definitely like targeted to Thady boy.
Unless Lymond just drinks it all in one fell swoop, because that is something he would do at this point.
Well, yeah, it says he tips down and drinks the whole thing and then chokes and swears, which is why I think he knows right away.
Well, and then Robin would have had to poison it beforehand, wouldn't he have? Unless he just turns around and quick dumps something in it.
Yeah.
I don't think we have enough details to see exactly how he does it, but he must have found a way to just like slip it into that drink or drug it and then bring it over and give it to him.
Right.
And this is Lymond off his guard because he's suspicious, and yet he drinks a drink that Robin's, you know, that's poisoned.
And I also agree with you. He probably does know at this moment because he's very sure at the end of the chapter that Robin Stewart was the poisoner. So I think he knows immediately.
Well, here's why I think that if Robin did it, it wasn't his idea and he didn't do it. Like, I can see someone else, obviously I think it's Dabney, telling him to do it and him not wanting to and being like, "Run away with me, like, let's go to Ireland," and then getting rejected and then doing it. But in the middle of 223, there's this line, and this is why I think Dabney is behind it. The poisoning also, like, in addition to everything else, also the poisoning. Because it says, in Liam ear, his lordship of Dabney had hardly ceased to pour a stream of amused comment, tolerant, civilized, and worldly wise. He seemed not in the least put out by anything they had just witnessed. He gave more the appearance, in fact, of enjoying within himself some enormous private joke. Liam, his nerves on edge, found it intolerable. And I think the joke is that he knows that Lymond's been poisoned.
But I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. Dabney could be behind the poisoning, but Robin could have only decided to do it in that moment.
That's what I said. Yeah. Like, I think if Robin did it, then it was because someone else told him to do it. And he was not going to because he was like, "Run away with me to Ireland," not going to poison him. And then he gets rejected and then's like, "Okay." And then does it. Yeah. I just don't think that I don't think it was Robin's idea initially, even if he's the one who executed it. Yeah, I think Diablo's sitting back and enjoying watching.
I would agree with that.
This thing happen. So.
I think also the way that things start to go downhill with the Brazilians is very telling because it's such an exploitative thing to have kidnapped these people and forced them to perform for the court. And we keep talking about this recurring image of the rottenness underneath the beautiful court, and this is like, you know, the clear, you know, example of that. Like, how underneath all of this refinement is this cruelty and savagery, toward other people. And that's like where it turns, and it goes from like beautiful and cultured to like dark and disturbing.
Yeah.
I don't know, historically speaking, what's happening right now, but is this sort of when France had their territories set up in South America, like French Guiana, and
it must have been in the early days of that, because there was actually in the entry to Rouen, there were actual Brazilians who've been kidnapped and like forced like to be in this like fake Brazilian village. So there was definitely French colonialism happening.
Yeah, showing us the
it had to have been in the early days of it, because if we're halfway through the 1500s, like Columbus didn't sail till the end of the 1400s, so they've only had the New World accessible for 60 years, 50 years.
Long enough to kidnap some Brazilians.
Yeah.
But then also, like you guys were mentioning earlier, right before that, was that the music that Thady Boy played inspired in O Liam this Irish pride, which is really funny because, Thady's not actually Irish, but he gives great justice to this beautiful music, and it actually inspires O Liam, and it's kind of funny because Una was trying to inspire him, and it just kind of didn't work, but then he has this moment with just hearing the music that actually does inspire him, and then it's kind of why he turns so angrily later on Thady Boy, is because it's like, you've represented yourself as Irish, you've represented Ireland in this music, and then you've represented it as this horrible, boorish, terrible culture, and how dare you pretend to be my culture and then insult us in the eyes of the French court.
Yeah.
I think the part of this whole drunken debacle that made me the angriest, before I found out that he was poisoned, was his interaction with the little queen.
I know, it's awful.
Oh, it's so sad.
So excited that she solved the riddle, which actually, since you told us the solution to the riddle, it made sense now how she figures it out. But he's just completely sort of ignoring her, and he knows it, but he's also trying to save his own life. So I was very angry, and like I was ready to just give up on him. So I'm glad of the fact that he was poisoned to give him some sort of excuse for this.
By the way, I have a suspicion that the way Dorothy Dunnett wrote every single one of these books was that she sat down and she said, okay, what is the worst thing that I can have my hero do? And then what is a justification that I could give after he does it that explains why it was okay?
I can't wait to see what this justification for his worst transgression in book 3 is. Whatever that.
God. Oh God. Just wait.
Yeah. I mean, this line that Liam says to him is just so telling, where it's like, Mother of God, Frances Crawford of Lymond, you've made a slut of your art, have you not, as well as a whore of yourself?
Yeah, I underlined that one.
That just seems like so telling of Liam's opinion, of course, but also just what Lymond is doing and going through. And yeah, like Liam's not wrong,
Yeah. Well, again, it's that irony that he didn't want to sell himself to the Queen Dowager, but instead he's selling himself to half the French court.
Yeah.
And then we also have there's this whole section around as he gets worse and worse and worse, everybody just is like acting like it's normal. And it kind of like, it's as a young man, it's suddenly become wild, and it's like it's not just him, other people are acting in this way too. So this is like, I think this is like when it said he put his fingers in their entrails and twisted. I think the twisting was in kind of turning them into what he has been doing, which is very unhealthy and awful.
What does D'Aubigny say on 226 at the bottom of the section?
I looked it up.
Oh,
because I thought,
what is it?
Sort of confessing. I looked it up, but I didn't write it down.
Oh.
Italian. I know it's Italian. I thought it was French, but it's Italian. Per qual dignità l'uomo se creasse. Something about the dignity of man is his downfall.
I will find out for you. It's in here.
Sorry, I should have written it down, but it was a couple days ago. Because I thought that's what tipped Margaret Erskine off to the fact that, oh shit, Lyman's been poisoned and this guy did it.
For which dignity man is conceived, used in an ironic sense in the text.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There was also a whole bit, and I don't know if this was Lyman trying to unpoison himself or it was just drunken debauchery, where like he thought his leg was broken and there was meat in his boots. I don't know if that has anything to do with the plot or it's just a signal of how wasted this guy is right now.
I couldn't tell if it was like a way for him to fake moving around in crazy ways or if he really couldn't figure out what was going on with his shoe. Like, I wasn't quite sure.
I also have no idea, and if any of our readers want to comment, I know Dunnett doesn't put anything in there without a reason, but I don't really understand why that's in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a reason that I'm just not smart enough to figure out.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Like, I figured his leg wasn't broken and that there was something wrong with his shoe. But I was like, why is it that?
But why would there be giblets of meat that he's been squashing?
Yeah, ew.
Is he gonna like drink the blood then as a way to throw up and get the poison out? I know it's disgusting, but like he's purposely making himself vomit as much as possible.
Yeah.
Eating raw meat would do that.
Ugh. Well, it's also interesting to look back on the scene and realize that the entire time he's been like actually terrified and really, really sick and, you know, potentially on the verge of death and all alone in it and having to play this role and like get through this extremely painful experience. And then you feel kind of bad for him. I mean, I feel bad for him. Yeah, this was not fun.
I like how halfway down 223, as soon as he wakes up, he sings that little song, which basically tells you what's going on. I cannot eat but little meat, my stomach is not good, but sure I think that I can drink with him that wears a hood. So he's drinking with death, like, I've been poisoned, my stomach's not good, like, somebody do something. Yeah. And of course he always has a little quip or a quote or a story to go for every situation, even when he's drunk and poisoned.
Yeah, even when he gets shot and he thinks he's gonna die in Game of Kings, he's gotta give his last final quote before he goes to Tom. I also think it's really telling when Oliamro kind of interrogates him, and you know, he's like, "Have you forgotten who you are? What is your name?" And he's like, "I don't know." And then, you know, "Why are you here? I can't remember." And then, you know, "You don't recall a child who's liable to be killed." And his answer is, "Richard will look after it," which is a crazy answer, a really irresponsible, kind of mean thing to leave on Richard, but also kind of sweet that he's like, "Oh yeah, Richard's got it." And also he's still in character as Thady Boy, but now he's referring to Richard. So like he doesn't know who he is. And then we get a line right after that. "Then Thady Boy, Ballagh, and Lymond, the one at last fused into the other." So they really have become, you know, one. And Thady Boy isn't just a role. Thady Boy is an aspect of Lymond. He's not all there is to Lymond, but he's part of Lymond. And this is a direction Lymond could go. This is what he could become. And there's always this like risk and this dark side in him that could come out at a, you know, at an extreme.
I think on my second read, like on my first read of that scene, I thought the whole I can't remember, Richard will look after it. I thought it was like him just being so drunk, like him being Thady Boy in the extreme. Like he was so drunk that he was completely out of it and completely irresponsible, and like the biggest example of his flagrant disregard of his responsibility ever. But on the second read, when I knew he was poisoned, I think this is him like almost dead. Like he has no, like he's not cognizant of what's happening, and it's the poison has like, I don't remember, and the only thing that he can think of is like it's like he's a little kid, like Richard will take care of it, you know? Like he's gone back to this, whatever is the most basic thing that he knows. And the most basic thing that he knows is that Richard will take care of it. And it's just like,
Oh, I love them. I love the two of them. I like that interpretation. I sort of agree with it. I definitely agree with that. That's part of why the Richard will take care of it comes out. But he does also, like, he's somewhat cognizant, because then he makes that argument again, I can't make music and live like a choir boy, which is back to that argument about does the art justify the lifestyle? And I love that, like, because we were talking about this earlier, like, how much is this really about his art? But like, his music is the thing that has inspired a Liam Rowe about Ireland. Like, it really has an incredible beauty and power. And that's not something to scoff at, but it probably doesn't justify all of this.
yeah.
But I do enjoy how Oliamo responds. And it's, again, this fear of abusing power.
Yeah.
You're not hired to make music. If you're going to abuse the power it gives you, then you'd better not make it at all.
Yeah, which is such a good like microcosm of his own beliefs about power. Like, yeah, you can do it, but if it's going to go bad, you just shouldn't do it at all. And,
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, it leads Lymond to respond with the worst remark that he's made, I think. When Oliamro says, I am leaving for tonight, I am for leaving tonight. So he wants to go back to Ireland. Thady Boy's response is, leaving the other bitch to cut her own throat. Obviously, Una.
Which is a horrible thing to say, and what do you think he means by that?
I actually didn't think it was Una. I think it's the queen. Like, because the threat is to the queen. And Oliamro just said, your job is with the young queen. Maybe there's a man or a woman alive who can wring the wine from your guts and send you back there. Myself, I can see no need to help. I'm for leaving tonight. And then he says, leaving the other bitch to cut her own throat. The first one being Loudest, the second one being the queen, the idea being that Loudest was on death's doorstep and he killed her out of mercy. And if someone assassinates the queen, like, no one will be there to do that. Like, I mean, yeah, I think the idea of Una works, but I think it's also like you're abandoning her too, kind of.
But it's Oliamro leaving, not Thady Boy.
Yeah, but isn't he, like, sure. But Oliamro is also, like, if he's there to provide cover for Lymond, he's also there protecting the queen this whole time. If that's Lymond's job and Oliamro is helping him do his job, somehow the argument for him being in France, the only reason he's there is to provide Lymond. Like, is he doing anything else? Have we seen anything else?
Politically maybe gonna do an alliance with France against the English, but not really. He's the one who's there to see how the rich people live.
Yeah, he's just there on vacation, but giving Lymond this cover. So.
I don't think necessarily Lymond needs Oliamro for the cover anymore. He's thoroughly entrenched himself in the French court.
Yeah. But why? Also, I guess I feel like, why was he there in the first place?
There must have been an actual plan for Oliamro to go there, which was, there was stuff about it in the beginning. The French are courting the Irish as a potential, thing against the English. I think it's about Una because Lymond wants to hurt Oliamro, and this is what will hurt Oliamro the most in this moment.
And that's how I read it.
Yeah, I just saw it as like an accusation of you're abandoning the child, which was an incredibly cruel thing to say. And
it's cruel no matter who he's talking about. Yeah. But if he's talking about Una, it's especially cruel towards Oliamro.
Yeah. I just saw, like, the comparison to the dog is helpless. And, like, he had to kill this helpless, dependent creature. Una can take care of herself. Like, it's just, like, I mean, I think she's well evident. Like, in a good way. Like, that's not a criticism of her, but I think she's more than proved that she's able to take care of herself. And yeah.
So have we finished this part, and we want to talk about when Margaret comes in, or anything else on this section?
I don't really have anything else to add about that little part. We obviously just see that he's still in a terrible state, and he's trashing the room now as well.
Yeah, and there's a line that he's near hysteria.
Yeah.
And Liam's throwing every liquid in the room, throwing all this water on him, and thinks he's wasted when actually he's like almost dying, and it's pretty awful unintentionally. And I think she had to build up their increasing frustration with each other in order to justify this scene, because Liam is so awful to him in return.
I think they'll be coming to terms and sort of apologies later.
Because they were both super terrible. Like, there's not an innocent person in that relationship.
I mean, I don't quite understand why Lymond wouldn't just say, "I've been poisoned, help me." But right. It is Lymond. He doesn't like relying on other people, so.
Like, it's not like Liam doesn't know who he is and doesn't know that there's an assassin and doesn't know, yeah.
I mean, if we can see from the first book how he didn't want Richard's help when he was shot, it makes sense that he's refusing to admit that he's on death's door here.
And it's also true, like, at this point, he could be so far gone with just having the singular thought of hiding the fact that he's been poisoned while trying to fix the fact that he's been poisoned. Like,
yeah, and I think it's also just very instinctual, because his father was awful, and then he was on the galleys, and no one's going to be sympathetic to your pain in the galleys. So like, I think he just got used to hiding it because he had to, and then that's just how he responds. It's very hard for him to come out of his shell and reveal his vulnerability, because when he has in the past, he's gotten hurt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you think he's able to reveal his vulnerable side more to women than men?
Oh yeah, and it goes directly back to his parents. Yeah. Sevilla versus Gavin. Like, one of them you hide your suffering because they're not going to give a crap. The other one is the one who's there for you and who loves you. Although he's also able to reveal his vulnerability a bit with Archie, so that's good.
That's true.
But
Margaret to the rescue. Margaret goes up half an hour later. She knows right away. I mean, she has known. She says that Archie told her, he's been poisoned. So she helped him out, and they talk.
I think there's a couple important bits in here. The nail marks on his palm kind of showing us how actually like terrible this has been for him. And then she looked and saw what the belladonna and his own extravagance together had done to Francis Crawford. And now she also saw that she could not afford the luxury of tears. So she looks at what, not just the belladonna, but his own extravagance, and she's like trying not to cry because he's such a wreck.
Yeah, and interestingly, she also saw that she could not afford the luxury of tears, for now he had reached the end of his resources. And I find this interesting in terms of where we are in the book. So we're here in the book. And if this is the moment where Lymond has reached the end of his resources, like if Margaret is reliable in this moment and she's telling us like this is actually like Lymond's darkest point or darkest night, it's super early in the book for that to happen. So I'm interested to like, what's going to be worse? Like, is he going to have, like, maybe this is his darkest moment physically, but he has yet to come to terms with his darkest moment, like emotionally or spiritually, if you not spiritually in the sense of religion, but in the sense of like the soul, like who he is and his own identity or something, like what's coming up.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because we've got all these threads, these thematic threads about his identity, kind of what he's going to do with his life. And and about, does this lifestyle justify his art? And none of those have been addressed. He hasn't come to terms.
Yeah. Can he like mentor people? I think like what is his responsibility to people who look to him? I think is a huge question that is completely unanswered at this point.
Yeah. No, I think you're on the right track with like all those things that still need to be resolved. So even if this is a physical low point, it's not the climax of the book.
No. So yeah.
And he hasn't come to terms with the Thady boy part of himself either.
Right.
And I like Margaret's observation. It would have made a fitting tomb, she supposed, for Thady boy Ballagh, meaning the wrecked room. That it was fitting for Francis Crawford, she would not believe. So there's more to him than Thady boy, but like, is he able to reconcile? Will he be able to reconcile this part of himself and like manage it? Because there's also this wonderful quality of charisma and inspiration and playfulness, and like Thady boy in moderation is fantastic. Thady boy in excess is terrible. So can he balance this out?
Yeah.
I mean, it might have to do with the fact that his guards are down because he's poisoned and drunk, but he really lets Margaret in this scene. Like, he's not throwing Kristen Stewart in her face like he was the last time. He's appreciative. As a family, the Erskines always seem to be saving me from myself. There's none of that pretense that was there with their last meeting.
Yeah. And I loved her insight here where she said she wondered how much stoicism it had taken to continue playing the fool, knowing the poison was working and trusting to drink, to oil, to God. To God knew what other impromptu expedients to preserve his life and also his appearance of ignorance. And so that dual pressure in the midst of dying, that you're both desperately trying to save yourself from dying and also hide the fact that you're both dying and trying to save yourself from dying from everyone who's looking at you. And just Margaret's thinking about that, I thought.
I liked her insights here and her empathy. This is like one of my favorite scenes with her, that she's there for him in his time of need.
Yeah.
And then also I like how he says, I was sorry about the little girl, but it couldn't be helped. Like he definitely feels bad about how he was with the queen. And I like that he calls her the little girl. Like that is like, obviously he knows she's the queen and he thinks of her as a queen too, but he cares about her as a child.
Yeah. It harkens back to that moment where the Dowager Queen said it in the last book about how like, to you, my daughter is all this, but to me, my daughter is the little girl, and that Lymond also sees her that way. I also love the moment where Margaret, she says, in the end, she bent, adjusting the blanket underneath his head, and said, I told you my role was to sit by the hearth. And I love this idea that like she's quiet and unassuming and just works on works to make things happen, makes everybody's life work, but that's what helps save his life. And like, it's not dramatic, it's not over the top, it's just this quiet, get things done woman who's like, here I am doing what I'm supposed to do.
And then her sweet little empathy that's like, oh, she hates that he's going to be alone. If only Robin Stewart even were here, who is going to look after you?
They have been spending a lot of time together recently.
And he's the one picking him up out of the gutter and taking him to bed. And then Lymond's revelation, but my dear, Robin Stewart is the murderer.
The murderer.
Murder!
We'll see.
That ends this section of the book.
To use Buffy parlance, I don't think he's the big bad.
I don't think he's the big bad either.
He's a minion.
He is.
If that,
we know who the big bad is. We figured it out. Come on.
I'm not completely convinced. I mean, I'm sounding like I'm super convinced it's Dabney. I'm not completely convinced it's Dabney because I feel like she could trick me again because I got so tricked at the beginning of the book.
He may be leading you to believe that it's Dabney when it's not.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna hold on to that belief for now. Maybe find out next part of the book that it's Dangan or somebody. I don't know. But
right, or the guy in London. like who hasn't even been around, you know?
Dumb.
I don't remember.
Yeah, whatever. What do you guys what do you think's gonna happen next, and what do you want to happen?
I don't know what I think is going to happen, but I want Lymond to get a break from the French court. It's destroying him. He needs some time off. Obviously, we know historically that nothing is going to happen to the little queen, whether he's there or not. But of course, he doesn't know that because he's living in the story. So, but I would like a change of pace for him. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Send him to rehab. Send him to rehab.
Yeah, I would like these like debauched evenings to stop. Like, can this be some sort of like wake up call, come to Jesus moment or whatever of just, this isn't working. Like, not only is it not working for him, like he almost died, but it's also not working in the sense that he's not, like, I guess his plan, I mean, if his plan was to draw out the murderer and he was going to be the bait, it worked. I mean, maybe.
Worked really well.
Yeah, but this is not a good plan. Like, it was perhaps a successful plan, but it was not a good plan. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And
I do think that Richard will be coming to court. Yay!
Yeah.
And what's gonna happen when Richard shows up?
That I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. I would like Richard and Lymond to be allies in this book.
Yes.
Like, it would be really nice if they, like, if we see that sort of post Vale, Richard and Lymond continuing.
If Richard is what brings Lymond back to his senses, I would enjoy that a lot.
That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of Archie. I feel like there's still like, so okay, if Robin is the one who got the poison from the menagerie, which why not, sure. I still feel like there's something fishy at the menagerie, like, because
I agree.
Because the first guy who's dead from the paper mache whale, like from what is his name?
Pierre Destays.
Yeah.
I can't believe you remember that.
The missing field man.
Yes. So like he was part of the menagerie, and then we had that like list of people that Archie has mentioned, like the lady. There's a lady, there's a moneylender.
Oh yeah.
There's like that whole list of people that seems sort of random, and he brought him up twice.
There's Pelican, who we haven't met yet.
Yeah, and then there's the Cornishman who beat up
Liam
Rowe, or injured Liam Rowe. And yeah. And then we have we also have this tension between Jenny Fleming, Dion, the Queen, the Constable, Saint Andre. Like there's that whole churning business happening too. So.
Yeah, things aren't great in the French court behind the scenes.
King seems to be kind of out of it. Like it's not really, he's not really part of anything. But yeah. So
lots to reveal or uncover or resolve, etc.
Yeah.
Can't wait. All right, any final comments?
Nothing here.
No.
All right then. Thank you everyone. Goodbye.
See you next time.